Hey, this is Bob Sorrentino from Italian Roots and Genealogy, and I'm here today with Elena Gisi from EG Ancestry. And we're going to talk a little bit about this fantastic document, actually a will that I found, and Elena translated for me. So thanks, Elena. Thanks for being here.
You're welcome. Thank you for your invitation.
So before we get to my stuff, you had a very interesting thing happen within the last couple of months, and that is you did some research for Lewis Gates Jr., correct?
Yes. Well, I did it a couple of years ago, 1.5 years ago. It was September 19. And the program, the show Finding Your Roots, had contacted me in order to ask me to research the genealogy of a famous actor, who is Christopher Meloni. And his origins are Italians, of course. And I researched both sides of his family, and I found a big amount of stories and people, names, perhaps something like 70 ancestors. And I went back on a family line back to the 17th century. And in the end, they broadcast this show, this episode. But the most important, the most intriguing ancestor was his great-grandfather, who had been abandoned as a child. He was a foundling. And this was the main story, the topic of the episode. So some of my friends and customers were disappointed because they didn't see the big job I did, because they stopped very early. But it was great. It was great because it was a very interesting and touching story. And even if all the rest had not been broadcast on TV, I'm happy the same. And well, if Christopher Meloni will like to have his full genealogy tree and all my reports and all my findings, I will be very happy to give it to them.
Well, I'm going to make sure I send this to him because I'm not shy. So, so I sent you a link to this will and testament. It was from, I think, Google Books or something like that. It was all in Italian, which I didn't have a clue. But how unique is it to find a document like this, whether it's on Google or whether you're in Italy and you go to a notary and find that?
The point of the researching is that you never know what you will find. It may be a will, a very long and detailed will like the one you found, but sometimes for other investigations I found clinical records or foundling records or sentence trials. And all of these are very interesting because they give you, they tell you a story about your ancestors. I don't mean only the aristocrats like your family, but also common people. There may be a hidden story somewhere, and it's just a matter of patience or luck if you come to one of these documents, which could contain a great deal of information and details and data about your ancestors and family.
How did you go about starting with it and reviewing it? Because I know you gave me a very detailed report. So how do you do all of that?
Okay, so I read it very quickly at first, just to understand what it was about. So I understood it was a will, or better, it was the transcription of a will, which had been commented already in the 19th century by a lawyer. And all of this was following a sentence trial, a suite from between two members of your family. So I read it very quickly to understand the context and the people involved and so on. And then I started by reading it thoroughly, but disregarding all the bureaucratic stuff, because in all the text is usually full of bureaucratic things, and a lawyer's explanation is full of details. And I was focusing on your wish that you wanted to achieve it with this document, and it was who are the members of the family, which is the structure of the family, what is involved. I assume that you didn't care about the law being Article 8 or 15 or else. So I disregarded all this stuff, and I made it very shorter. And then while I was reading, in parallel, I was writing everything that was everything important, the juice of this will that was coming from this document. And in parallel, I was making a family tree in Excel so that I had a focus on how the family was composed, the structure of the family, the people involved, the dates, whether they were deceased already or they were still alive.
I guess there were three brothers. Two of them didn't have children. And my fourth great grandmother was the daughter of one of the brothers, I guess, of the Baron of Carpignone. Am I saying that right?
Carpinone, yes, Baron of Carpinone.
Yeah, which I looked up the picture. It's a beautiful place on a mountaintop.
I looked at the picture too. Yes, it's a very nice village on the hills in the mountains.
Which they purchased in, I think it was 17, or sometime in the 1700s, they purchased it. But so two of the brothers didn't have children. And I guess would have been my fourth or fifth grade uncle decided to split up the estate in a certain way. But I think unusual for Italy, he decided to give one of his nieces a big portion of the estate or the money, correct?
Yes, in the end, it was not really his first decision. Gaspar's will and his vision, because he had a strong vision behind this will, was that the estate and the goods and the money must not be scattered among nephews and too much people. He wanted all the wealth to remain in one person, and this person was his nephew Giuseppe, who is the father of your ancestor. And at first he didn't want to give anything to the women, to the female line, just a few money, 8,000 ducati out of 100,000. Mm-hmm. So it was just a small portion, but then eventually nothing went as it wished to. So his brother died before him, and his nephew Giuseppe didn't have any son, only a daughter. And so just a few days, maybe 1 or 2 days before his death, he amended his will and gave all the wealth to the niece with a condition, because he didn't want this estate, this wealth, to change the surname. He wanted to give everything to a person with his surname. And so he said, he commanded that, okay, the niece was taking these goods, but she was bound to leave them to the other family, to the family line, which carried the surname, the Riso. But eventually it went wrong, because in the meantime, other laws came that were forbidding this passage of the property after the death. And so she was the one who remained the owner of everything. And I don't know whether it was a luck for your family or not, because I don't really know how your genealogy goes beyond it, whether you are the descendants of Mariangela de Riso or you are the descendants of the Carpinone, who are the people who had the right to get these estates, but in the end, they didn't get it. And they legally didn't get it because the law changed in between. And it was very interesting to read.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously I descend from Mariangela de Riso, who married the Duke of Capricotta. Yes. And very unusual there, because in that case, when the heir to the Capricotta, the Duke, passed away, his sister actually got the title of a duchess, which I believe is very unusual in Italy,
It's very
correct?
unusual. It is very unusual for South Italy, for South Italy, and for South Italy in that period. But eventually there were perhaps reasons behind it, because even at that time in that place, they knew some women were better managers than some men. Mm,
That's like
so
today.
perhaps that's like today. They knew.
My wife tells me she's a better manager than me, so I'm going to go with
No.
it.
It depends. That I think there's much politics behind it, whether the woman is going to marry a noble or not a noble or something like that. Even Gaspar, he had a vision, a strong vision of what to do with his estates and wealth and so on. He was surely a strong man who wanted to rule the world, and he tried to rule the world. He tried to rule his wealth, his goods, even the purchases he wanted to make with his goods. He's trying to rule far after his death. He said, my nephew will inherit it, and then his son, and then his nephews, his grandsons, and he really wastes a lot of sentences explain every possibility of inheritance, maybe 2 or 3 generations after his death. And it's a pity that everything goes wrong in the end, because even after a couple of generations, the property is left to the niece, to Mariangela de Riso, but indirectly to the Capracottas, who were not family. And so this, he wouldn't have liked that. Surely he wouldn't.
Yeah. Well, he left me out. He didn't go far enough, but and the interesting thing with the Duchess of Capricotta, she and this really confused me for a very long time, because when I look at the Libro di Oro, it's Pirmalo Capici Piccicelli. And what happened was, when she passed away, or before she passed away, she combined all the family names into one. But
Yes.
but only the heir, her son, the oldest son, the Duke, got all 3 names. Everybody else is just Pirmalo. And that was making me crazy until I finally was able to find enough birth and death records and put it all together. And then I found 3rd and 4th cousins in Italy who confirmed, and they said, yes, our fathers or our great grandfathers, only Pirmalo. And so when you look now, only that one line has Pirmalo Capici Piccicelli. But they've been very nice. They believe that I'm actually a relative. Caracciolo, not so much. They're a little bit above. They were from princes, so I still haven't convinced all of them yet.
Yes, there was an issue about passing on surnames to the children, because if the father was a noble, but the mother was a noble too, they didn't want one of the 2 surnames to be lost in generations. So they added names, surnames. But actually, I'm not really very familiar with this, because most of my research and investigations are on common people, farmers. And so I don't really know which is the politics behind all these. I mean, why Piromalo goes to one generation and the Piccicelli to the other generation. And there must be something behind it, and rules that I don't know about the aristocrats.
Yeah, the only thing that I could guess is that because she changed the name before she passed away, she changed the name when her husband passed away, and she put all 3. And so I guess she conferred that name only to the heir, because he was the rightful heir, and everybody else was born Pirmalo, and that's what they were, and that's the way they stayed. But to your point, very interesting in my family is that, and I don't know how much of this my dad ever really knew. My cousins told me that my grandmother would tell them that her cousin was the princess, and they thought she was just a crazy old lady, but her cousin actually was the princess because her grandfather was the prince. But like I said, I don't know how much my father knew, and I don't know how much my grandmother, I mean, she passed away in 1961, how much she knew about the family and how far back it went. I have to think that she did. But it's totally unknown. On the other hand, mom's family are farmers from Bari, and in Italy, they never would have met. In America, it didn't matter.
Yes, of course. I think this is the clue. This is the point of everything. In South Italy, in that period, I mean, before the unification, there were really lots of nobles because the king was giving benefits to the lords, and these lords were becoming princess. It doesn't mean that he was like Prince Charles in the UK. I mean, it was not the one prince. There were many princes. There were big lords and with their enormous estates and fields, and they had towns, cities under them, and they were getting taxes from all these people, farmers and merchants and so on.
We'll be right back.
Experience Italy like never before, traveling with a scheduled group or create your own bespoke tour with friends with philitaly.com. Pack your bags and follow Phil. That's www.philitaly.co. Yeah, and it's fascinating for me to find that out. But in retrospect, it's very, very sad because, the people who worked for my ancestors, they didn't have anything. They didn't have any rights. And when I go back to my ninth great grandfather, who was the Prince of Avellino, he was the Prince of Avellino and the Duke of Atrapalda and the Baron of some other place. So that whole section was his. And, you think about the people that were subservient to him. I mean, he obviously had a great life, but it is sad in a way when you think about it.
They lost everything. When we became a republic, the aristocrats were abolished. So officially, there are no nobles in Italy. Of course, there are, right, because the son of an earl is always the son of an earl, right. And he likes to be called Conte, of course. But it doesn't have any official value anymore because we are a republic, and so all nobles, bureaucracy, aristocracy, they are just abolished. They are just a title without rights. The title has a meaning, but it doesn't have rights.
Right, and I think even after unification, that didn't necessarily, especially in the South, and some people I've talked to said it even got worse. It didn't necessarily help the serfs or the farmers and those people because they basically still didn't have any rights.
Yeah, you're right about this.
I mean, now I think now it's different, of course, but it took a very, very long time, and that's why so many people from the South came here. So we've just been watching Stanley Tucci. I don't know if you've seen any of that for CNN, where he did six episodes in Italy, and I'm hoping we're going to get there in September. I'm hoping we don't have to wait till next year.
I don't know.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I know it's getting closer and closer. We've had my wife and I both got our first shots here, but I know in Italy it's really, really tough. But I keep trying to, only half kidding. I tell my wife, we should just go there and stay there. But he did Lake Como, which is, I know you're from that area, and it was just breathtaking. And I showed my wife the pictures. I said, see, we could look at the lake and we could look at the mountains and everything else.
Yes.
But for anybody who wants, whether it's a short document or it's a long document like mine, how would they contact you and to find out about their family, or if they need a professional researcher?
Okay, so I have a website. It's www.egancestryresearch.com. I have an email, which is egancestryresearch@gmail.com. They can contact you if they want, because you know my name. And I'm very happy to make not only the usual genealogical investigation, I mean, going to parish or researching online, but also to read and translate and summarize these kind of documents. For example, last year during the strongest lockdown for the COVID, I received some letters from my customers, letters that their grandparents had received from the Italian relatives who had remained in Italy. And they were saving these letters, but they couldn't read them because they are handwritten, they are badly written, they are grammarly poor because they were farmers, and they didn't have a clue. So I could read them, and it was amazing how many information about the family this letter contained. And it was not just names and dates, of course. It was really the psychology of the people. It was something like reading the will of Gaspare de Rizzo. You could catch his psychology, his thoughts, his vision. He wanted to rule the world. He was a strong man. He wanted to decide everything, and he was. You could feel he was desperate when he had to amend his will according to the change that had happened. So his brother had died. The small son of Giuseppe died, and so I could feel his desperation, saying, I have the right to change my will, and I'm going to change it right now. And from the date he changes his will, and from the date the will is opened after his death, is only 4 days. So he died. He was really on the border, and it's something amazing when you can discover the psychology of one of your ancestors. For example, reading the letters, it was something of this kind. You could read a letter of a soldier of World War I, or the sister who is asking money to the people in America, or the others exchanging their thoughts. And this is very, very nice. And it's something that perhaps people have at home in a drawer and don't know what to do with them. And this is part of my job. I mean, it's not only going to archives, which I love, but also to take every document that can hide stories and make it readable to my customers, to anyone.
It sounds like it almost broke his heart to have to, and this is crazy, in this day and age, but almost broke his heart to have to leave it to his niece rather than a nephew.
I think so. I think so.
That's crazy.
I don't think it has anything to do with love and affection. I'm sure.
No, right.
I'm sure he was loving her, and I'm sure she was loving him, because she was the one who went on doing everything he had ordered. For example, the mass, a daily mass to be held every day for the duration of the war, he said.
Yeah.
and I was shocked to read that. It means he really wanted to rule the world even 100 years after. But she was the one who paid the priest to hold a mass every day. So she was eventually loving him, and it was reciprocate. But of course, she couldn't be the legitimate heir, because he wanted the estates to remain with the Rizzo while she became a capracotta. And I'm sure he wouldn't have liked that.
Yeah, no, I'm sure. Well, this has been great as usual. And for anyone who missed it, I did a previous interview with Elena and one of her clients about the woman in black. So I'm going to post that out there again too, so people can listen to it, because that was another fantastic story. Well, thanks again. And I'm hoping I'm going to see you maybe in September or maybe next year.
I hope to. Things are going slowly here, but we all hope that it will be released, the lockdown, sooner or later.
Yep. And stay safe.
Stay safe. You too. Have a nice day.
You too.